So this is going to be my thoughts on Deep, Dark, and Dangerous because I remember it better than the last book I read, The Stone Child. And this will probably have spoilers in it, so sorry. So this is a kid's book, I think. Probably. It's about this girl named Allie going on spending the summer at her aunt and mother's old cabin with her aunt and with her little cousin Emma. And her mother really doesn't want her to go, but she wants to go, so she goes. And yeah, it's a ghost story. And so at the beginning of the book, she finds a photograph with her mother and aunt as kids. And there's a third person torn out of the photo. And her mother and aunt don't want to talk about it, and I was just running. I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. This book was pretty predictable. Maybe there won't be any spoilers because I don't really want to talk about this because I just didn't really enjoy it all that much. Maybe I'm too old for it. But I think my younger self might have enjoyed it. It had a nice ending, like a really nice ending. Made me happy. But it was a pain in the ass to read this for me. Like, it wasn't difficult, like I thought it was pretty well written and I thought the character for Emma was really interesting. But like, it was just stressful to read because there's so much discord amongst the family. Like intentionally there's discord amongst the family. And I thought that was well done, but it stressed me out. I can't do that. And yeah, I gave it a 3 out of 5. It reminds me of a white tulip. And I'm gonna go ahead and talk about The Stone Child. This is The Stone Child. Oh wait, I don't know who that's by. Let me read. I can't tell. I'll figure it out later. This one's by Dan Poblocki. Poblocki? I can't really read names good. Yeah. I thought this book was a bit more interesting. This is also for kids, I'm pretty sure, but I thought it was like more creative, like in plot. And I was actually creeped out by this. Like, I was sitting with my feet out of my doorway, and it was nighttime, and I was reading a creepy part. I was like, I'm gonna just inch my feet closer to my body. This book is about this kid named Eddie moving to a new town, small town, of his favorite author, his favorite horror author, who went missing 13 years ago, and he notices stuff going on. His dad hits something strange, but his parents don't see it, but Eddie sees it. Like, Eddie notices that wasn't like a bear or a deer. He knows that was something weird. And so yeah, this book just kind of jumps right into it. And honestly, it's like, it's kind of cheesy. Like, the dialogue between the characters, it's like bad acting. There was like 3 main characters, Maggie, Harris, and Eddie. All important in that order. Wait, no, in reverse order. Okay, so yeah, let me just spoil it. So, kind of spoil it. So, the main villain in this book is fucking Lilith from the Bible. They don't actually know it's like the Lilith, and they talk about that near the end. Like, they're questioning, like, was that actually the Lilith? Like, I thought that was pretty cool how they were like talking about that. Like, they don't actually know. But one thing that they don't talk about is like who was spray painting shit in the town. This is kind of weird swearing. This is a children's book. In the book, there was somebody spray painting that the woman is watching you, and that woman is Lilith, or whoever she really is. And we don't know who was spray painting that and why. Like, that's not even brought up in the book. Like, they didn't even question that. Maybe the author forgot to write that in, but... Oh, and like, okay, so The Stone Child, this was like a gateway for like, oh man, this book. Okay, so, let me explain the plot. So, Eddie's noticing that his favorite author's monsters in his book are real in the town, and he's trying to figure out what's happening with his friend Harris. And they figure out that, well, they find this, I'm so bad at explaining things. Eddie's mom finds this journal, and she gives it to Eddie, and Eddie reads it, and it's just code. So he and Harris are trying to figure this out. And then they find this book. He finds this notebook in his author's abandoned house, and Maggie's also there. She sneaks in, and this is actually where it's creepy. Like, this was like probably the scariest part of the book. Like, honestly, like, it was just creepy. Like, because it seemed kind of realistic. Like, what was it called? Like, okay, so in this little notebook, the story was titled The Wish of the Woman in Black, and that title itself is kind of creepy to me. And like, compared to like, okay, so there's and compared to the fictional author's other fictional stories, This book is creepy. Maggie figures out the code with the notebook, and then they start reading it, and then the woman in black comes, also known as Lilith, and if I say her name too many times, will she come? She who shall not be named comes, and she like fucks with them, but because, okay, so I need to give some context on how these monsters are actually in the town. So there was like this backstory of like, I dropped the book. There was this backstory of how like in biblical times, like the Garden of Eden, and there was this pen that this angel used to carve in the stone. This stone child right here, the monsters that weren't allowed. You can't really see, but there's like dragons and shit. It was kind of weird. It was kind of weird. Like I did not expect a biblical history lesson thing. I kind of liked it though. The author decided to do like cursive, like really tiny cursive writing. That's kind of hard to read for me at least, but I have the IQ of a cucumber. There's like this pen that this angel uses, and then that the author in this book, the fictional author, what's his name? Nathaniel. Nathaniel gets that same pen from this lady in Europe, and he starts writing with it, and he finds out that everything that he writes comes true, but only where this statue of this girl is, because there's two of these statues, one boy, one girl, and they were a part of the Garden of Eden, and the Garden of Eden like shattered all over the world, and the pendant led him to this town where the statue was, and out of the statue is like a gate. The statue is a gate, and whatever he writes comes out of this gate. So he was just writing horror stories, and so he was writing monsters, and those monsters are actually the things that were cast out of the Garden of Eden that weren't allowed to see the light of day, and now they're allowed to see the light of day. And so then the woman in the black is she who shall not be named, Lilith, and she's trying to get him to write her story so she can come and enter the world of the living, or of the light, I don't know. And I need to calm down. He stopped writing Lilith's story, so she's only somewhat in the material world. So she can like interact, but she can't actually physically do anything. So she can just like cause hallucinations. And so, oh yeah, but the other monsters, they'll fuck your shit up. And I think the creepiest monster was like the lake dogs. Like there's these lake dogs with like knife-like teeth, and these like taller than trees, cloaked figures with like pale faces with like no lips, and at least that's how I got the description. Anyway, they destroy the statue of the stone child, and they're like, hey, we did it. All the monsters are gone. But then Eddie's like, wait, but Mr. Nathaniel, that's the author, but Mr. Nathaniel, what about the boy statue? Where's that? And he's like, nah. In the epilogue, there's like like the town, like everyone's back in the town, like because of the town like becoming a ghost town because of all the monsters and shit. And so because all the monsters are gone, people are coming back to the town, and people like the author again because they hated the author because he created all these monsters in the town. But now they like him, and he's back, and he wrote and he's just reading at Harris's. That's Eddie's friends. His friend his friend's mom has a bookstore, and the author's there. He's reading the book, and the book is about these kids' adventure, and he starts reading it. The author starts reading it, and it's just the beginning of the book. He's retelling their story. I thought this book was kind of cheesy, but also kind of cool. I liked it. 3.5 out of 4. It reminds me of a poppy or a nightshade. Wait. Reminds me of a nightshade. So yeah, let me just toss this. I didn't make. I'm really hyper today. Yeah. Sorry. I have cappuccino.